Chapter 8 Cracks. "Holy shit, Ryan," was all Jack could manage to say. "Look, this isn't the time for a pity party." Ryan could practically feel the weight of Jack's judgment on the others. "And it isn't the time to start blaming anyone. We need to contact Ray. He's the only other person who knows anything about this, and he could be in trouble." "I think he already is." Ryan's head snapped around to Jeremy, who had been dead quiet until now. "What do you mean?" "When Michael and Gavin picked me up, I couldn't get in touch with my contact. With Ray. He was the one who had tipped me off that something was going down. Not Funhouse." Jack and Ryan just stared, mouths agape. "Jeff doesn't talk about him. You all refer to him as being dead, so I assumed he was excommunicated. I've been in contact with him since I was promoted to full-time fake AH crew. I didn't think anyone would approve, and I didn't want to get him in trouble, so I kept it to myself." Ryan almost burst out laughing at the absurdity of it. Suddenly it all made sense. Why Jeremy ran, why he wanted to get in contact with Ray, why he wouldn't talk to Michael and Gavin about his contacts. Unless he'd been feeding information to anyone, he was in the clear. Jack seemed to arrive at the same conclusion only moments later and took off to tell the others, leaving Ryan and Jeremy alone but still handcuffed in the basement. "I'm sorry, Ryan. I got you in the shit for all this, and all you were trying to do was help me." Jeremy couldn't look at him. Ryan laughed weakly. "Don't give yourself so much credit. You didn't drag me into anything. I came after you. Besides, you didn't know." Jeremy finally worked up the nerve to look up at Ryan. "Thank you." He paused and sighed heavily. "It's just like I'm not good enough for them, for the crew. It was like I was expected to be Ray, to fill this space that had years to form." Ryan scowled. "You know that's bullshit." He paused as his head spun a little, vision blurring before he continued, more softly. "You're not Ray. It was never going to be the same. We knew that. But that doesn't have to be bad. Trust takes time to build, I know, but they'll come around. You've been good to the crew, Jeremy. You've been good for us." Jeremy paused to take it in. "So, I've heard that you and Ray, you had a thing." Ryan grinned. "Why does everyone always have to make it sound sexual? We were a team on a bunch of heists. The R&R connection, as he dubbed it. Ray's an excellent marksman. He was quick on his feet and had an even faster trigger finger. Got headshots from 1,500 yards out. He covered me on what would have otherwise been suicide missions. Kind of like you do now." Jeremy smiled to see Ryan happy again, before thoughtlessly asking, "What happened then? Why did you leave the crew?" Ryan shook his head, which had started spinning again. "I actually don't know. We never really talked about it. But I remember one day he got caught off guard, unarmed, had to beat a guy to death with his bare hands. He was always so detached about everything. I thought nothing could shake him, but he was pretty messed up about it afterwards. I think it just became real to him. Like suddenly all the people he had killed up until that point he hadn't really thought of as people, but once he got close and personal, every kill afterwards took him back to it. He never really talked about it, but we could see it. You could tell by the way he'd come to work something wasn't right. This work changes you. In the end, I don't think he could deal with it anymore. Maybe too much guilt had built up." Ryan was suddenly overcome with exhaustion, involuntarily closing his eyes and slumping forward. He was again vaguely aware of Jeremy calling his name, and he thought he managed a response, but everything was blurry and simultaneously sounded muffled and 3 times too loud. He was aware of Jack and Michael returning to the basement and releasing his hands, taking him and Jeremy back upstairs gently and laying him down on a couch. When Ryan opened his eyes again, everything felt surreal. His vision struggled to keep up with his movements, like he was watching everything happen on a split-second delay. Sleep deprivation and the effects of multiple blows to the head were catching up to him. He was just starting to fade out again when Gavin suddenly dropped onto the couch beside him, sending his heart racing and his mind fought to keep up. He felt wired again, unable to settle, and sat up with a renewed energy, trying to shake off the dizzying feelings in his head. The whole crew were now gathered in the living room of the safe house, which looked decidedly civil. Jack sat in one of the large armchairs, and Jeremy in the matching opposite one. Michael perched on the edge of the couch next to Gavin, who was nursing his arm in a splint, while Jeff stood with a glass in one hand. Nobody was restrained, everybody looked exhausted, and no one was making eye contact. "All right, I presume everyone's up to speed," Jeff began, still not making eye contact. "Jeremy, you've apparently been in contact with Ray the most recently, so what was his last known location?" Jeremy was quiet, still shaken, as if not sure how to continue. Instead, Ryan jumped in sarcastically, his voice laced with venom. "That's fine, Jeff. It's cool. It's not like you just spent the last 24 hours hunting the kid down and interrogating him." "It's okay," Jeremy said softly. Ryan's head was pounding again. "No, it isn't. You shouldn't be okay with this." Ryan? Speak for yourself, buddy." Jeremy turned his big brown eyes to Ryan, skimming over his bruised cheek and swollen left eye, the cuts on his nose, brow, and cheek from where Jack's brass knuckles had connected, the blood crusted on his lower lip and chin. Ryan was so focused on figuring out who had managed to get the crew to turn in on itself that he hadn't yet stopped to consider that he was the one being wronged. Under normal circumstances, when someone in the crew turned on him, it was usually for a reason. He'd always been a troublemaker. He liked to stir shit, but it was always in the spirit of fun. Besides, he always thought he'd get his own back eventually, on his own terms. Still, through it all, he'd never, even for a second, considered leaving the crew. Despite the heaping piles of shit he'd been through with them, he had been loyal since the day they hired him, and he knew he would never leave them. There was no way he could figure out how to put into words why. In his exhausted, sleep-deprived state, Ryan just laughed. It was a crazy, desperate kind of laughter, and it made everyone in the room uncomfortable instantly. Ryan? Buddy? You okay?" Jeff asked cautiously. "I'm not stuck in here with you," Ryan managed through the laughter. "You're stuck in here with me." He collapsed back onto the couch in fits of laughter. "Okay, well, Ryan has officially lost his mind," observed Jack. Jeff looked confused. "Was that a Watchmen quote?" Ryan nodded, still giggling and wincing as though it hurt. It did. "Well, he's right. We're stuck with him," added Michael. "I mean, no one else could deal with that much crazy." Jeff ran a free hand through his hair, pulling at it and making it stick up at strange angles. "It's like... You've heard the phrase herding cats. It's like fucking wrangling retards with you lot. Every damn day." "Yeah, but we're your favorite retards," Gavin chimed in cheerfully. The mood had lifted decidedly, and everyone felt a little more human, or maybe just a little more like themselves. Jeff turned back to Jeremy, a genuine look of concern and remorse on his face. "I'm sorry. I should have checked in first. Are we going to be okay?" Jeremy met his eyes. "Hell yeah, you guys are like family to me. I get it. You gotta look out for us. I don't envy your situation. I just feel like shit for this, you know?" "Don't." "Alright." Jeff turned back to Ryan, who, at this point, was beginning to regain control of himself. "Are you okay?" Ryan gave a lopsided grin. "Yeah, it's just my whole body that hurts." "I'm sorry, buddy. I'm a real asshole." Ryan smiled back at him, and it was a cheeky but genuine smile. "Yeah, you are," he laughed, "but only most of the time." They all laughed again before Jeff brought the mood back to a more serious tone. What happened here today? None of this can ever get out. You all realize?" They all nodded in agreement. "Everything that's happened, this stays between us and only us. Because if anyone found out there were cracks in the crew—" Jack interrupted, his tone gentle and paternal. "That's not the problem, though, is it? It's not the cracks that make us weak. Michael, you told me you'd never been more scared than when Ryan hit Gavin up on that roof. Jeff, you nearly tore yourself apart when you thought you'd made a bad call and put the crew in danger. Jeremy did everything he did to keep the crew safe in the first place, and the only reason he let on he was in contact with Ray was because—" He just looked at Ryan. He didn't need to say anything. They all understood. "We've all made enormous sacrifices for this crew. That's our weakness. But it's also what makes it work." The words lingered in the air. He was dead right, of course. It seemed so obvious now. After a long and reflective moment, Michael piped up. "Well, that was an intense 24 hours. Jeff downed the rest of his whiskey in his glass. "It's not over yet, boys. First, let's get to Ray. Then, let's find this fucker." Gavin flipped open his laptop to scan for media coverage of the heist. He immediately found a clip of a young male reporter standing in front of the charred wreckage of the bank. Gavin cranked the volume so everyone could hear. Weasel News reported that the suspects of Thursday night's bank robbery and blast that killed 5 civilians and 12 police officers are thought to be affiliated with the gangland outfit Fake AH crew. The crew gave out a mixed cheer and quickly went silent again. The body of a man found at the scene has been identified as another known gang member going by the street name Alphonse. His involvement in the crime is currently the subject of ongoing police investigation. So, not Shadles. Jeremy wondered aloud. Jack was still intent on finding the guy responsible. "We need to find that gang." Michael looked to Gavin. "Gav, think you can do it?" Gavin grinned wide. "Should be a piece of cake." "All right," Jeff said, rubbing his hands together. "You two work on the gang. Jeremy, you and I'll work on getting a hold of Ray." He frowned at Ryan, who looked way too far out of it to be of any use to them. "Ryan, take a nap or something. Jack, take care of him."